Welcome to the show. I'm Anthony O'Brien, and today we're talking about one of the most important shifts happening in America today. How solar power is becoming more practical, more affordable, and more widespread for homeowners across the country. Our guest today, Jim Esparza, a Renewable Power USA, a company that was grown from its roots in Yuma, Arizona, into a multi-state solar operation serving markets Texas, Florida, New Jersey, and Illinois. What makes this conversation especially timely is that Renewable Power USA isn't just riding the wave of solar adoption, they're helping shape what the next chapter of that growth looks like. We're going to talk about expansion, financing, innovation, customer trust, regional market differences, and battery integration, and what it really takes to scale solar across America in a way that works for real families. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Anthony. Thank you very much, man. Thank you for the space and the opportunity to be here. We're excited, man. We're excited. We're gonna bring in some good stuff. Some definitely some things that we haven't talked about, in the recent months for sure for you guys.
So, for the people hearing about Renewable Power USA for the very first time, give us the story. What is the company? Where did it start? What are problems you were trying to solve?
Yeah, we started back in 2017. I used to work for Tesla, and ever since I was a kid, my mom owned a small business, cleaning business, and I always wanted to have a business. My mom talked about freedom, talked about just an opportunity to create more, and I got the opportunity to work with Solar City, which is now Tesla, and I fell in love with the product. I think it was super innovating. It was technology. I also seen the issue in the community where people were complaining about their bills, right? Like it's like, hey, summer is coming. I'm in Arizona, so those of you guys that are here in the West Coast know that summers, gets a little intense, and bills triple to double. So family, it's a conversations, right? And I was like, you know what, that's a big issue, and these guys are bringing in an innovation in a way for you to cut on those bills, and I got into it and I loved it. I did well as a door-to-door consultant for them. And that's when I said, you know what? This is a product that I want to commit to and I want to, grow it. And I loved it, brought in some family members within the company. And I kind of was kind of forced into it because when Solar City was bought off by Tesla for, I believe, $1.2 billion. So it merged to this brand where they didn't want any door-to-door agents, right? They're like, we're done with that. Elon went into the whole virtual space and retail, and that's what gave us an opportunity, to start the Renewable Power USA. And it was originally Renewable Power AZ, but I had a good mentor, that once told me, hey, you know what, why isn't it USA? Why just Arizona? And he kind of did expand my mind and to multiple markets.
And that seems to be one of the defining themes of your company. Not just expanding, but expanding thoughtfully. From the summary of our earlier discussions, it's clear that Renewable Power USA has built a multi state strategy tailored to local conditions rather than trying to force one standard model everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we started in a small city, population of 100,000. It's Yuma, Arizona, the sunniest city on earth. And then I feel like we we dominated. I feel like we did really well. We did some. We have a slogan that is called "We make the impossible possible." I feel like we did some of that in a small city, right? And then we wanted a new challenge, right? And I'm grateful enough also that we were partnered with with good leaders, and they were also expanding, so we were right behind them, and with them we experienced their expansion. We expand right behind them, and that's where I got to see the benefit of not just being in one market, but also, expanding strategically in those markets that you mentioned.
Well, let's dig deeper into that expansion story. You've grown from Arizona to Texas to Florida, New Jersey, even some projects in Illinois. What has that journey taught you about scaling a renewable energy company across very different regions?
It taught me a lot, man. I think I got to see the different markets. I got to see that, there's opportunities out there. There's a lot of good things about it too. There's also some failures that we had as well. And we said, you know what, we gotta, downsize and, continue to target the specific areas where we have had some success. But I think overall it's just that we got to see that the necessity of solar power is out there, and it's in not just in the United States, but also globally. But us just by expanding in those markets, we were able to, to sense that and see that within the local those markets that we penetrated through Renewable Power USA.
That's a very strong phrase, a new energy culture, because what you're really saying is that the market is not just about sun exposure. It's also about consumer psychology, utilities, regulation, and infrastructure.
I feel like it's I mean, aesthetically wise, like I think it looks more attractive, right? Instead of all the wires that we have across the freeways and highways and all that, right? But I think not just that, but it also helps the homeowner play the game of life, more conservative, more sustainable, more affordable, instead of the homeowner getting bombarded or even businesses with all this inflation and the rates that are increasing. They get to take control, have their own power plant and get their fixed rate and essentially eliminate if possible.
One thing that stood out to me is your focus on Texas, especially your bilingual service strategy. You identified a large Spanish speaking customer base there and built around it. That's more than just expansion, that's serving a market in a cultural, smart way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of our teammates are bilingual, so they speak Spanish. And we strategically targeted Texas, Florida, where those are the markets where there's a lot of Hispanics, a lot of people that come from a different country that are working hard, in America, and we're able to service them, with their language, and I feel like I think that is the biggest in America. There's a high population of people that speak Spanish, so we're able to dominate in that space as well.
Well, that trust theme keeps coming up. We'll get into more of that later, but it sounds like your growth is tied just as much to credibility as it is to technology.
Yeah, that is huge, right? In any business, being credible, right? Like doing what you say you're gonna do, not just as as a leader, as a consultant, as a, whatever is it that you're doing. That's essential, right? Because if you are promising something that you can do and then you're not able to do, then you will not be able to sustain or run an organization or deliver the customer the right way. So that's definitely a huge thing for us.
It could not have been said better. And let's talk about why solar is becoming more mainstream product in our United States economy. You've been in the industry long enough to see public perception shift. How has the conversation around solar changed over the last decade?
Mm. It has been a huge change, right? In the beginning stages, I felt like the clients were scared, right? It was something new for them. They couldn't understand how, a few solar panels could power their home. And also having the capability of installing a system like this with zero out of pocket. Right. So I think just that transition and having them to understand that, it was a lot more difficult in the beginning stages of the business. As like you said, a decade went by, now clients understand it more. Now they know they need to go solar. It's just a matter of them trusting, the company, and they're seeing it more and more. So I feel like it's just a matter of, them trusting the consultant, the company, and making that decision to innovate their homes.
So awareness has increased, but trust still has to be earned.
Yeah.
Despite those challenges, your outlook is very optimistic. In our earlier conversation, you said you expected major growth from solar adoption over the next 5 years, potentially the industry's biggest surge to date.
100%, Anthony. And we have had, just like in anything, right? Like in life, there's seasons, right? We have had a Great Depression. We had like, one of our best years in the entire lifetime, and we see tons of innovations. The same thing here with solar. There was definitely, some turbulence, through the last couple of years, which, we're past that season. And now we're in the season where, we're build the customer confidence again. The industry is is investors are back in it, and seems like there's a lot more confident. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of scarcity within the industry, has been removed. So now is, companies like ourselves are going to continue to double down, to invest, to grow, and to build confidence to our clients.
Well, here's an important topic we're going to touch: financing, because this is one of the most interesting parts of your story. Traditionally, solar has often been sold around tax credits. And for some homeowners, that created uncertainty. But you've moved towards a hybrid financing approach that gives customers the equivalent of a 30% upfront discount instead of asking them to wait on delayed tax benefits. Walk us through that.
Yeah, we have this amazing new innovating product that we're one of the exclusive organizations that has this. Is that it's called prepay lease. So the investor gets to take the tax credit, they finance it to the homeowner, and they get to knock off 30% from the total cost of the system, which is making it the most affordable that we have ever seen in the past decade. So just think about that, right? Anybody that's in construction or is in services, like that is extremely rare to ever get to see. That you go back to, a decade, you go back a decade in pricings, it's something that it's amazing for our clients and for even for us too. We're excited to present that to the client and to offer that to them.
Well, that makes sense. It takes the concept from future promise to present value.
Yeah.
From a homeowner's perspective, that's powerful, right? You're not just selling equipment, you're removing the friction. And according to the summary, this model has been helped address concerns that customers have across the country about the benefits of older tax credit structures.
Yes, no, absolutely. It gives more confidence to the client to say, like, what's not such a big investment. I'm going to pay this in the next 5 years. Might as well do it for myself and get to own the system and not have to, spend all this extra money on electricity. And even now with gas, right, and everything going up, we have talked about yesterday we were just talking about our in one of our meetings how even clients are going to be able to be smart and save even on their gas, right? By purchasing a electric vehicle. And let's say whenever they're ready to upgrade their vehicle, it could be a smart choice for them to do that. That way they could power their cars through solar power that they already have installed in their roof. So that is also like a game changer, and also putting the homeowners and businesses in a way better position that they are now, right?
So, walk me through a deal. Translate this into actual savings for a homeowner. Give us like a little tidbit of how this would really work for the average homeowner talking about putting on a solar roof operation through you.
Absolutely. So we go for the average customer, right? The average customer, let's say they spend anywhere from $280 in electricity, right, to 300. That's the average homeowner that spends. They make a conversion to solar. They reduce their bill to say 180 dollars, right? And then with that they have new technology, which is solar power, something that will increase also their property value. They get a battery backup included with their system. So outages happens and whatever could happen. They have a backup system, and they have and they do this at zero out of pocket, and then we give them extra electricity. So we give them a little bit, like let's say anywhere from 15 to 20% more of what they're utilizing, and with that they can power their vehicles. And instead of them paying $300 in gas, they'll be reducing it to close to 20 to $50. So not only are they saving, a good $40 year round, just that year, but also long term, locking in, eliminating inflation, but they're also, saving on their gas, and the amount of money they spend on their gas.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about the product side for a minute since you brought that up. You mentioned before that about 85% of your installations are rooftop solar, with the rest involved around ground systems, shade structures, depending on the property and customer goals. Why does rooftop dominate?
Yeah, rooftop dominates just because is the most affordable way to do the installation, right? So, we already have obviously massive amount of deals coming in that way, so we master that. Not that we don't, we haven't mastered the patios, which we do, but we just do so much more rooftop, so it's a lot more affordable for the client, and it makes more sense in the savings. Once you start adding ground mounts, patio, then obviously it reduces the savings amount, right? But we do it because sometimes the customer wants to do it, right? Like if you feel like, for example, you, Anthony, you're like, hey, you know what, I want a patio, I want to, I want something, nice for my house. I mean, I'm not going to tell you, we're not going to say no, right? Like we want to do whatever you're asking us for. But if you're really concerned about maximize your savings, solar rooftop is the way to go.
You mentioned batteries are increasing the system cost, but customers can still maintain meaningful savings overall. That seems important because some people assume that the battery automatically kills a financial case. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, and that was the case. That was the case not too long ago. But just like we mentioned with the new product that we rolled in, the customer takes a big chunk of that. We eliminate that 30% off the total cost of the equipment. So now it makes it really attractive for homeowners and businesses to do solar now because now is back to making tons of sense, even with the battery.
And what about equipment selection? You mentioned a preference for American made components when possible, including products like Tesla batteries and US made optimizers, while still balancing the cost of the customer budgets. What is that looking like? Are we seeing more production out of the United States? Are you getting comfortable with that kind of product, or are you still forced to deal with Chinese and Malaysian product?
Yeah, we are backing away from that just because, what we experienced, right? The whole with the politics and now exporting the products from out of seas, now there's a premium added to it. So we've been preparing for that, to make sure we select American made panels. And that's what we're offering now. That way we don't have to deal with the whole logistics and losing tons of, income just because we have products stuck in in the ocean and it hasn't gotten here, so I think that was a smart move from, from distributors and people that handle the logistics, and that helped us out with that. So, and that's what we preferred also to offer to our clients.
Are tariffs making it the overseas panels
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that was there was a big hit, and not too long ago when tariffs hits. But we were able to take the hit, as a company, and we took a couple losses. But at the end of the day, we wanted to serve the clients. But yeah, that was an issue. But thank God it was something that it didn't break us. But we definitely did learn a lot from that as well.
Another thing I found interesting about Renewable Power USA, you're not opening offices across the country. You're relying on third-party installers that you're vetting to handle the bulk of the work, which keeps you lean and mean and not developing a lot of overhead. It's a very smart way to scale, but it also raises questions about quality control. How do you manage that?
No, absolutely. Managing control, it's like if we're like a broker, right? It's like we do the shopping for the client. We do all the analysts, we analyze, right? I'm a really picky client myself. I like quality, affordable quality, right? So, obviously we're able to utilize that with, the largest, installation companies in the world, in the US. And we pass those discounts to the homeowners. So we make sure that they deliver. We have a team that's in operation as well that, oversees the jobs, make sure that the speed is there. We get them installed as fast as we can, but with quality, right? That they deliver with what they say they're going to do. And we hold them accountable for warranties and everything that comes included with the product. So that is a big advantage that we have compared to other people.
So you say collaboration over competition. That's a very strong comment. So rather than trying to fight with every large solar company in every market, you sometimes work with them in ways that expand capacity and opportunity. You want to touch on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that is something that not a lot of people do, right? They're always trying to compete. And I think the best way to do it is to collaborate, because obviously business is competitive and you have to have some type of competitive drive. But you also got to understand where you're at, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, I feel like, I want to be the next Amazon. I want to be the next Zuckerberg. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's good to have a big vision, but you also got to understand where you're at, at the moment, and if that's not, you're not able to move like them, then why not be around them, and be a lot more successful and have fun doing it, and don't have to worry about this other, things that they would have to worry about, or they would have to invest, right? And that's how you truly build a long term healthy business, I feel like, and long-term clients as well.
Well, that's a very mature way to think about scale. It's not just be the biggest, it's build the strongest model.
Yes, 100%.
So let's talk about the toughest markets and the biggest challenges. You said Texas is one of the toughest markets. Why is that?
Yeah, I feel like it's just different, right? It's different because, well, there is a lot of bad actors, I will say, in the area. Just because there's tons of business out there, tons of nice people, but there also has been a lot of companies getting involved, with different contractors getting involved in the space, and we did have I will say, a good season of customers paying for systems not being installed, or not placing an order, and the order is halfway installed, and a lot of installing without permits, and we did see a lot of that, out there. So we did definitely had to do a lot of cleaning up, when it comes to that. I'm happy we're able to do that, help out in that space, but I think that's been one of the most difficult markets, because of what has happened within the industry out there.
So that aligns with the call that we had. Deregulation, multiple providers, past company failures have made the market tougher for the consumer confidence, and you're working hard to overcome those issues. What about northern markets like New Jersey, Illinois? A lot of people still assume solar is mainly a Sunbelt story. Touch that for me.
Yeah, it's still a good market, right? Definitely New Jersey. There's a lot of clients that want to upgrade their homes, right? Do you still see high utility rates? The cost of electricity is expensive. It's at one of the most expensive in the U.S. And even though it's not as sunny, there's still we will install the system that will produce enough power for them to provide them for what they need. So it's obviously it's an innovative market too. It's one of the big cities in the United States, so they're innovating as well as much as they can, and there's tons of opportunity for people out there, and they're in Illinois. There's even utilities are the demand is high of electricity, right? So they're having a hard time providing customers with electricity at certain times of the day. So they're incentivizing people to actually go solar, and they're giving a couple thousands of dollars as credits just for them to having a solar system like in Illinois. So that is making it attractive to the homeowner, and also to create a healthy infrastructure of electricity around those states.
So that message is clear. Solar works in more places than many people think, but
Yeah.
the system design must reflect local realities. Did I say that pretty clear?
Yeah, no,
Let's talk about the regulatory side. You mentioned California's requirement that new homes include a minimum level of solar to pass inspection. That kind of policy obviously changes in the market. How do you view these trends?
no, that is great news. But for example, California, it's a high population, right? Especially Southern California. So same thing, right? Like they're demanding so much power as we age. More and more energy is needed, especially with AI, new constructions and renovations, and we're relying a lot more in electricity. So now they have laws where any new construction you have to have solar. Because in a way, I feel like they're telling them like you got to kind of pull your own weight with power, right? And have your own source of power, because they could only export so much, right? So that's why laws like that are happening, and requiring homeowners to do it. And we're excited about it, right? And I think it's a right thing to do. That way we don't face like things like in South Africa, where there's outages in a certain hours. And South Africa is not, people think about Africa, and Africa like the poverty side. South Africa is pretty wealthy too. So even in those places, there's certain hours that there's no power. So they're shut down for certain hours, and then the power comes back right back up, because the infrastructure was not built to sustain the population. So I feel like America is doing a good thing, especially in California, doing and being aware of that.
So that opens the door for builder partnerships, which you identify as another important growth channel.
Yeah.
It seems like one of the most important powerful long-term levers for your business. It's not just selling one homeowner at a time, but embedding solar into the home building pipeline itself.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I think it's it's a time to collaborate, time to, to assist, because there is that demand of people that need, that need the services.
So, I mean, we've touched on trust throughout this conversation, but I want to give it a little bit more of its own segment because it seems central to your philosophy when you think about why customers say yes or why they hesitate. What role does trust play?
I think the trust is one of the biggest things, right? Because if you walk in and you're having a meeting with somebody or you're consulting somebody or you're collaborating with somebody, if you sense of energy and a confidence with experience, knowledge, and confident in what you're doing, I feel like the customer. It's easier for them to make a decision, right? But if you walk in and you represent yourself like somebody that is a jack of all trades and an expert in anything, I feel that's where you might lose, a lot of people. And I feel like in society now, that is pretty common. Like a lot of people are doing a lot of things, but they're not really mastering one thing, and I feel like as a consultant or as a business, you know, the man, if you're able to show that professionalism and that commitment to what you're doing, then you build that trust and that credibility, and you have customers confident with with the service, with what you're doing, and happy to move forward with your service.
So, the trust challenge exists partly because of the industry's own history. Deals that were too confusing, companies that overpromised, lenders and contractors that didn't deliver.
100.
Well, that's a powerful lesson for any growth business, not just in energy. Trust isn't a soft variable, it's an operational asset. Looking ahead, paint the picture for us. Where do you think the solar industry is headed over the next 5 years? And where does Renewable Power USA fit in that future?
Yeah. Within the next 5 years, we're gonna start seeing solar a lot more. It's gonna be a lot more common, right? We're gonna see laws like California that any new build is gonna require their own system, have their own power plant, just because we have the AI manufacturer and storage that are gonna be dominating, the world actually. So they are pulling a lot of power. So we're gonna see that in a lot more states. So obviously, companies that have been established are gonna continue to expand and to grow. And renewable power, we're definitely going to be positioned in those states, and I feel like even in more states that will demand our services and our expertise. And so yeah, we're definitely continue to bring the best customer experience, the best experience to our partners, to our employees, and people that are working with us. So I feel like we're going to continue to make that more penetrations in different markets, and continue to scale and grow in a healthy, productive way. I feel that's where we will be within the next 5 years.
So when you talk about value, you mean both financial value and practical value.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when it comes to financial, we definitely continue to, we will expand to the nine figures. And as a business, we will, as far as personnel too, I will say, well, at least the 250 teammates, within the organization to service, the areas that we need to service. But yeah, and also making a huge impact with their clients as well.
Do you think we're approaching a point where solar is no longer viewed as an alternative energy, but just energy?
Yeah, yeah, because this is think about it as when we used to use a land service before we used to have landline, and then we all converted to cell phone line, right? So people in the beginning were like, "Oh, I still want my landline service," right? And it was hard for them to get a cell phone. It was expensive. It was not as affordable. And then little by little, everybody has a cell phone, right? Nobody could really go about without a cell phone. It's the same way with solar. Like, the traditional way that we're used to consuming power, like, now people are not really going to rely on that. They're going to more rely on their own solar system and having their own power plant. And that is where it's going to be normalized, and everybody will have a solar system in their home.
That's just a great story. What we like to do on our wrap up here, Anthony, is we like to do a rapid fire round. So
Good.
one word to describe the solar market right now.
The solar market is, I will say, it's the phoenix, the rising phoenix. It's coming up, picking up from the ashes. We had some turbulence, but I would say is a phoenix.
Biggest customer concern,
I trust
biggest customer opportunity,
making the decision.
most misunderstood part of solar,
Savings,
rooftop or ground mount,
rooftop,
batteries, luxury or standard future,
standard.
state with the biggest growth opportunity,
Yes.
all of them. What's one thing homeowners should ask any solar provider before signing?
Experience.
That is a great answer. That's a great way to end this conversation. Jim, this has been fantastic conversation. What I appreciate most is that your story is not just about selling solar panels. It's about building trust, adapting to regional realities, innovating financing, and helping more Americans access energy solutions that are practical, cost-effective, and future-focused. Renewable Power USA journey from Yuma to the growing national footprint is a compelling example how real expansion happens not by treating every market the same, but by understanding people, places, and policy in deep ways. If your forecast is right, the next 5 years are going to be a major chapter not only for your company, but for solar adoption across the country. That overall direction, multi-state growth, bilingual services in Texas, 30% upfront financial innovation, widespread battery integration, increasing builder partnerships, all reflects in the discovery summary that shaped this episode. Jim, you've been phenomenal. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you, Anthony. Thank you for having us here, for the space, for your time, and I appreciate this.
And thanks for everyone who's listening. This has been Powering America, how Renewable Power USA is expanding solar across America. I'm Anthony O'Brien, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys. God bless.